and welcome to today's session for the Natural Birth Summit. Today, we are talking with Siobhan Miller, and we are talking about overcoming fear in birth using hypnobirthing. Welcome, Siobhan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. Great to have you on. So Siobhan is an accredited hypnobirthing teacher, and she has a master's degree in psychology. Siobhan has not only written a best-selling book about hypnobirthing called Hypnobirthing: Practical Ways to Make Your Birth Better, but she's also developed, through her Positive Birth company, a hypnobirthing framework and a series of online courses which have been extremely successful in the last 7 or 8 years. So we're really delighted to have Siobhan on today, and we're going to dive straight in. Siobhan, if you could start talking about fear in birth and where the need to overcome fear arises.
Yeah, sure. So I think when it comes to feeling frightened about birth, whether that's even before you've got pregnant or when you're pregnant or even just, when labour's starting, sadly, I think it's really, really common to feel that anxiety and worry, especially if you're a first-time parent and it's completely unknown, you're going into the unknown, or actually if you had a baby before, but it wasn't a very positive experience, perhaps you experienced some birth trauma, then it's completely natural to feel frightened and apprehensive about giving birth again. I say sadly because there are so many ways in which you can find a way to have a birth experience that is positive rather than traumatic, where you feel informed, calm, in control as you navigate that experience. And actually, I'd go as far as saying that birth can be one of the most magical and amazing experiences of your life. To people that are frightened, that seems mad. I know people will be like, what is she going on about? But if you have a positive birth experience, you come away from it feeling on cloud nine, absolutely euphoric even. And it's a feeling that never leaves you. And, since I experienced that myself back in 2014, I've made it my mission to try and make, hypnobirthing and education around birth more accessible, because I really believe knowledge is power. And the more you know about how your body works, the more you understand about your choices. If you have techniques that you can use, tools in your toolkit that will help you to stay calm and relaxed throughout, it really is possible to have a really amazing birth experience.
And the importance of the birth experience. Could you just add to what you said by linking that to the start in life for your newborn and your new expanded family? Would you connect those things?
Absolutely. Like if you have a positive experience in birth, you're much more likely to have a positive postnatal period. You're going to feel good about yourself. Like I said, you might feel euphoric, you might feel on cloud nine. Sure, you might still shed a few tears because, your hormones are going to naturally be all over the place after birth. But at the core of yourself, you're going to have that really important life event and that memory of that being a positive one. And actually, people will remember their birth experience for the rest of their lives. You can ask someone who gave birth, 60 years ago about their experience, and they will recall mainly their feelings. It's the feelings that last a lifetime. They may not remember specifics anymore, but they'll remember whether it was a really amazing, happy day or whether it was something that left them feeling, traumatized or terrified, or with other negative feelings that can equally last a lifetime. So it makes such a profound difference, not just to the days after birth when you're bonding with your baby, and the ability you've got to, make that postnatal period a really lovely time, but it also impacts your, entire life, really. That sounds really over dramatic, or over the top, but it really is such a profound experience giving birth, whether it's your first baby or your fourth baby. I think it's so important and vital even to do everything you can to make that experience a positive one.
Yes, I completely agree. Could you move us on then by explaining what exactly is hypnobirthing?
Sure. Yeah, that's normally the first question. What is hypnobirthing? This weird name. So hypnobirthing is simply a form of antenatal education, and it's although it sounds a bit hippy dippy and hypnobirthing, people are left wondering what's going to happen if they go to a hypnobirthing class. I certainly did the first time. When I went to a hypnobirthing class, I thought, am I going to get hypnotized? Something strange going to happen? But actually, the name is pretty misleading. If you attend a hypnobirthing class, it's more a mix of science and mindfulness techniques. So you're going to learn about the physiology of your body, how it works in pregnancy, labor, and after birth. You're going to feel so amazed at all the things that your body can do and that it does without you even needing to interfere. And that knowledge alone, that usually gets even the most skeptical people on board. But also that offers you such immense reassurance when you learn that actually, contrary to everything you've probably been grown up seeing on telly or hearing these stories about birth, we're so conditioned to feel frightened of it. Actually, right. Learning how your body works is so reassuring because you think, wow, like I'm designed to do this. There's so many things that you wouldn't know about that are happening inside you. And then you learn a whole bunch of mindfulness tools and techniques, which are amazing for birth, but are also life skills. The things you learn on a hypnobirthing course aren't just for birth. You learn breath work, which helps to slow your heart rate down and help you feel grounded and calm. And I use that breathing technique all of the time. And you learn about using guided meditation, about building kind of connections with things that will help anchor you. There's so many wonderful things, light touch massage, a whole toolbox you'll have of things that you can use in labor to help you feel calm and grounded. And you'll also understand and learn that link between the mind and body. So the more calm and relaxed you are in your mind, the more calm and relaxed you are in your body. And you'll actually learn about how the hormones you produce when you're relaxed are the hormones you actually need to help your uterus contract. So it's all really, really linked. And if you go to a hypnobirthing class, you'll have so many light bulb moments where you're like, this just makes complete sense. Why didn't I know this before? Right. And that's why it's something I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, that really comes through. That's fantastic. I was interested in what you mentioned about history and what things that people are exposed to about birth before they themselves become pregnant and are expecting a child. And there's two parts that really are. One is the close history of your own family. It could be siblings or your parents and the stories that come from that. But there's also then the media context, isn't there? And
the wider
the way that birth is portrayed on TV, which is usually an emergency and very traumatic. Yeah. And that's so hypnobirthing. It sounds like you're saying that's a good way to break from that. The shackles of those images. Yeah. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, most people go through life. I mean, I get so mad at the TV every time you see a portrayal of birth on the TV. It's the same narrative. And I'm thinking, this is boring, guys. Like, do better. Not only is it inaccurate, but it's just the same, narrative over and over again. Someone's waters break. There's a mad dash to a hospital. It's like really dramatic, right. Or traumatic. And the reality is it's nothing like that. Usually your waters are most likely to break actually when your baby is descending and being born, at which point presumably you're not in Tesco's or a supermarket, you are actually in the space where you plan to give birth. Or if your waters break in advance of labour beginning, which they can do, then it can sometimes be 24 hours, 48 hours before your labour actually begins. So it's unlikely that you'll be out in public living your life, suddenly your waters go, and then minutes later, your baby's crowning. It's not realistic. There's they've missed out the whole labour part.
Right.
And there's this big kind of focus on that moment that the baby's born and it being, really stressful and horrible. And I even anecdotally, I asked my young son, how women give birth. And to my knowledge, he's never seen a birth video. This is years ago. He's now seen a lot of birth videos, positive ones. But he had just picked up this imagery, obviously somewhere, in society. And he said, a woman would be on her back, red in the face and screaming, oh, and sweating. And he had this very like strong imagery in his mind that he had just picked up from kind of this cultural representation of birth, that someone would be on their back, which is not conducive to birth.
We've known that for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah, like you know, just physiologically, you want gravity on your side. You want to be upright, have gravity on your side, helping you. You know, your pelvis is designed to open. You have all of this lovely hormone called relaxin in your body, which is softening all your ligaments and muscles. Your pelvis will actually open and expand to make more room for your baby to descend and be born. If you're lying on your back, you know, you're coccyx, it can't even move because you're lying on a kind of firm surface. You actually reduce the space by about a third. So there's just so many reasons why, you know, ideally you wouldn't be on your back. And then, yeah, red in the face and shouting was his kind of mental picture. And it's just, yeah, it's really, really sad. And obviously, you know, that's just a young child, but there are adults who are approaching giving birth now or are thinking about getting pregnant and are terrified because that's what they've seen. And actually, that moment when your baby comes out, you know, I've recently given birth, like just a few months ago, and that is immense relief because preceding that moment is really quite intense. And when your baby's actually being born and coming out, you know, it's this immense relief. And then obviously you pick your baby up and it's like you've won the life lottery. You know, it's a really amazing moment. And actually, the most hard work that you're doing is actually in the labor, where your body is dilating, where your body is, you know, contracting and opening. That's when actually you might be sweating. The moment when your baby's actually emerging and coming out, you know, that's like a really incredible moment. And I think TV's got it all wrong. It's got a lot to answer for. I suspect because a lot of films, I hate to say this, it's like the feminist in me, have probably been produced by men over time. I would love to see, you know, Hollywood do something different and have a movie where you see someone give birth in a birth pool, in an upright, you know, good position, you know, breathing.
Yeah, well, there's not some kind of crisis during the birth, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or some like hideous thing that the man is saying, or and also not just is it scary for women, but I think in TV and films, the man is always, and it's always a man, so it's never like a same-sex couple or a single mom. It's always like, you know, mum and dad, and the dad is always portrayed as like a bit of a buffoon character, like he's like putting his foot in it, or he's like, you know, he's not being a good support. And so if you're a guy and you're watching this, or that's what you've grown up with, you're thinking, how, like, the person I love is going to be screaming and sweating, and I'm not going to be able to help them. It's really disempowering. And actually, you know, doing a hypnobirthing class is as beneficial for the birth partner as it is for the person giving birth, because you will learn how to support that person in labor. And actually, you can play a really amazing role and be part of that amazing experience and be a real asset, rather than an inconvenience.
Yeah, feeling like a spare part or something. Yeah.
So I always say, you know, protect yourself. Don't absorb all of that stuff. You know, if you're pregnant now, don't watch things on TV that are going to be triggering. Actually go out and find, you know, real stories about people's birth experiences. And, you know, on YouTube, people share their birth videos, you know, positive birth stories that you can find. Even on our blog at the Positive Birth Company, tons of stories there, you know, actually, you know, real people's experiences, and it will give you so much reassurance that birth doesn't have to be anything like what you see on the TV.
Right. So we covered a lot of ground around what are the benefits of hypnobirthing. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to what you've already said about that?
Yeah, so obviously, like I said, it's really good for preparing for birth, understanding how your body's working, what your options are, you know, what happens if things aren't going to plan. You learn the mindfulness techniques to help you to feel calm. And like I said, those are life skills. But for me, when I first went on a hypnobirthing course, the most immediate benefit was in pregnancy, because I remember thinking, even if birth doesn't go as I hope it does, I've benefited from doing this course, because now in my pregnancy, I don't feel so scared. Whereas previously I was so nervous about giving birth that was actually taking some of the enjoyment away from being able to enjoy my pregnancy. And when I went on this hypnobirthing course, and I was like, wow, like I just felt so hyped, and like my body's amazing. It's designed to do this, like bring it on. And I also really enjoyed doing the kind of mindfulness practice. And that's something that I've, you know, continued doing. throughout my life now. So yeah, it brought those immediate benefits as well. And I think no matter, a lot of people are wanting that natural birth, but I think that's really important to understand that that won't happen for everyone for reasons that are outside of your control. And actually, hypnobirthing will really help you in those circumstances and situations where, things might change for whatever reason, whether because of complications or, any number of things, labor not progressing as you hoped, or premature labor, perhaps. There are things that happen that, we can't control for. But having those tools to be able to make those informed decisions, so you still feel, in control, able to use those mindfulness techniques to stay calm and grounded, they will help you navigate, whatever your labor looks like, and ultimately have that really magical experience.
I think that a lot of mothers say that even if things didn't work out, the fact that they did do the research, they did try to educate and inform themselves so they could make choices to give themselves the best chance, that leads to feeling far more satisfied than if you let the fear overcome you and kind of resist the process. And
absolutely,
are very concerned all the time and riven by fear, I suppose, is the
yeah, if you feel out of control when you're giving birth, and panicked and out of control, that's what can lead to trauma, is that feeling of complete panic. And actually that can happen in a natural birth in water, and that can happen in theatre, that can happen anywhere, really. People often associate, a positive birth is one where you're in water and there's no drugs and everything's going really well. And a traumatic birth is one where you have intervention and you're in theatre. But actually, I've met people that have had what looks like a straightforward birth on paper, but they feel traumatized by it because in that moment they felt out of control and they had no tools to help them to calm, to feel calm. They felt overwhelmed. And then I've met people that have navigated, a whole list of intervention and ended up giving birth in theatre by cesarean, perhaps. And they feel like it was the best day of their life. So, it really is how you feel in the moment that kind of stays with you. Yeah. And so, yes, hypnobirthing absolutely will help you achieve that natural birth if that's what you so wish. But I think what's really important to understand is that it's not game over for your positive experience if you can't have that lovely natural birth. Actually, that knowledge, that kind of knowledge is power. I always say it sounds a bit like a cliche, but knowing what's happening and understanding what your choices are and making an informed choice means you're a lot more able to kind of embrace that new pathway and kind of get on board with what's happening and feel in control and feel that you have agency in your own experience, and then come out the other side feeling, that was great. Yeah,
fantastic. Is there the types of births that hypnobirthing techniques can be used for? What is the space that we're talking about here? Is it the full range of
every birth?
Births?
I was saying, hypnobirthing is for every birth, every type of person. You don't need to subscribe to any particular school of thought. It really is very scientific. You're learning about how your body works, the hormones you produce, how your muscles work, how the two work together. You're learning evidence-based techniques that will help you to feel calm, relaxed, and more grounded. And you can apply those techniques whether you're at home, in a hospital, in theatre, in a birth pool, wherever you are. And also you learn a framework to help you navigate things when things are more tricky. So we call it use your brain, and it's kind of weighing up the benefits, the risks, the alternatives, what your intuition is telling you, how long have you got to make that choice, so that you don't feel rushed into a pathway. You can actually take that moment to ask those questions and make the right choice. So I think it's great for everyone. Everyone should be able to do hypnobirthing. That kind of is my mission.
I can see that. That's great. Can we look back to the issue or the question of birth partners and how they can get involved in birth and how hypnobirthing helps that?
Yes. So if you come to a hypnobirthing class and you're the birth partner, you'll come away with really a to-do list, essentially, of things that you can do, not just in birth, but in pregnancy as well. So I always recommend that birth partners and the pregnant person, they work together in pregnancy to do that kind of practice, that mindfulness practice together. So that will include practicing the breathing. So perhaps a birth partner would count for the person. So you breathe in through your nose for 4, out through your mouth for 8, for example. You can modify it and do 3 and 6 if that's more comfortable. But having a birth partner who counts for you, so you can kind of keep on track, is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Birth partners can also do light touch massage, which really stimulates all the nerves in your back and helps you to produce endorphins, and that's your body's natural pain relief. Birth partners can also help by reading perhaps scripts. If you're doing like a guided relaxation or a guided meditation, do that with you. And then more practical things, like if you're having a home birth, they can be filling the pool, inflating the pool, filling it with water, making sure it's the right temperature. Or if you're somewhere else, setting the scene. And I always say use your senses as a checklist. So sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and think, how can you ensure each one of those senses is being met with something that aids relaxation? So in advance, packing things in your birth bag that birth partners can then use. So if you're the birth partner, you might be going into that kind of clinical hospital space, turning down the lights, putting on some fairy lights, perhaps plugging some in. Maybe you've got some battery operated tea lights, spritz the room with like a little essential oil. That's your sight, your smell. Putting on a playlist or some relaxing music, that's your sound. You're in charge of the snacks, making sure that you're offering drinks and food and ensuring that the person who's in labor is hydrated. And that they've got comfort, that they're feeling a sense of comfort and support. So there's a whole load of things that birth partners can be doing, and that might seem overwhelming right now when I'm listing them, but you'll get like a checklist. And I think it's always better to know what to do than feeling like, kind of hopeless, helpless, and not knowing what to do. So
yeah, absolutely. And one thing you mentioned there was reading from scripts. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so with guided meditation, it's about kind of trying to stay in the present. So if you ever find yourself, your mind is going, you've got like loads of different thoughts and you're feeling quite stressed and overwhelmed, guided meditation is kind of one technique which you would consider mindfulness practice, essentially. So you can either listen to a recording, an audio. You're probably familiar with the Headspace app. That's essentially an app full of guided meditations. Or you might prefer to listen to your birth partner reading a script. So instead of listening to an audio of a stranger, there's something very comforting about hearing your birth partner's voice, that familiar voice. So they could then read a script to you. And the idea is that you sit comfortably, lie down comfortably, find yourself in a quiet space and close your eyes if that helps. I think that often helps by blocking, stimulus out. And then you just try to listen to the words and be guided by that script. So if you find your mind wandering off and you're thinking about something else, to-do lists, things you've got to do afterwards, you just guide your mind back to the words that are being spoken, and kind of the script is like the story, essentially the narrative of that script, and you'll kind of just try to stay with it in that moment. And I mean, there's so many studies that show the benefits of that kind of mindfulness practice. So birth partners can get involved that way as well if they wanted to. But if that's not your thing, there's so many kind of tools that you can pick and choose. You don't have to find all of them effective. I always say, you've got a whole toolbox and you kind of try a few things and you might love that one and think that one doesn't work. And that's fine. As long as you've got something you can use in labour that helps you to feel calm and grounded, then that's brilliant.
And labour is a series of phases, isn't it? And so some things that maybe worked great at the start, then they don't work later, and vice versa, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your labour might last, many, many hours, and you move through different phases, different positions will be more comfortable as your baby is changing position inside you as they work their way down. Yeah, you might be hot one moment, cool the next, hungry, feeling a little bit nauseous. Yeah, it's a flux.
Yeah.
I don't use the word it's a journey, but it's a journey. A journey to meet the baby. It is.
Yeah. What about birth environment? I mean, you've touched on that with some of the things you mentioned there, but expand on that a bit and talk about some of the practical things people can think about when they're preparing a calming birth environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say never underestimate the impact of your birth space, your birth environment. When we see birth on TV, this is another reason why it's not an accurate portrayal. It's usually somebody on their back, like we've described, in a kind of hospital setting, bright lights, lots of noise, lots of people around. And all of those things are the exact opposite of what will actually help your labor to progress. So your labor is fueled by a hormone called oxytocin. And that hormone actually makes your uterus muscles contract and your body dilate. So you need to have oxytocin. If your labor is being induced, the drug they give you, which in the UK is called syntocinon, which I know comes by other names as well in other areas of the world, but essentially that is synthetic oxytocin. So you either have your body's natural oxytocin or you're given a drip and given an artificial version. So it's a really essential component, and you produce oxytocin when you feel relaxed and happy and safe. So it makes absolute sense that the environment you're in for labor should be one that helps you to feel relaxed and safe. And so that's why home is such a brilliant place to give birth, because most people hopefully feel relaxed and calm and safe at home in that familiar space. So, but obviously that's not available to everybody. Not everyone can give birth at home. So if you go to somewhere else to give birth, whether that's a birth center or a hospital, or you're giving birth in theatre, then you need to take with you things that you can use to transform that space to make it as home-like as possible. And if you think about natural birth out in the wild, or even not in the wild, if you've got pets at home, like a cat or something like that, and you think about how animals give birth, they usually give birth in the nighttime because it's dark and it's, you're safer kind of in the safeness of the darkness, essentially. You're protected. They usually, cats, people tell stories of how they go to like a shoebox or somewhere very small and safe and dark where they feel protected, or under the bed or something like that. And yet we are animals ourselves, right? We follow the same pattern in how our body works. And yet we typically take ourselves to like busy hospitals where we don't know anyone and they're brightly lit and noisy, and just the complete opposite. And so, I really recommend that people give that some thought and prepare for that. And I use my 5 senses as a checklist, which is what I mentioned earlier. So everyone knows their senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. I say that with confidence, and then I'm like struggling to remember my 5
Did I miss one?
Sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And you just want to make sure, because that's how you read a space, is through your senses. If you go into any given room, how you feel about that space is through your senses. So meeting each one of your senses with something that aids relaxation and makes you feel safe, that's a really easy way to make a room go from feeling, clinical to calm and home, like a home-like space. So, for example, with sight, think about a brightly lit space versus like a candle lit space. Which lighting makes you feel, less inhibited even. And so low lighting typically is more conducive for the progression of natural labor. So turning off the strip lights, turning off the spotlights, bringing some fairy lights that you can plug in, or a little like lamp that you can plug in, or perhaps some battery operated tea lights so you can make it look like little candles around the space. All of those things will really help create an atmosphere that's one of like romance and love, and will help you to produce that oxytocin. And then you've got sound. So you probably don't want to hear like the sound of a busy hospital and like people outside your room talking and people laboring in other rooms. So bring either headphones or a little kind of wireless speaker perhaps, or one that you can plug in and somehow connect to your phone. Make a playlist that you want to listen to, or perhaps some guided meditation tracks that you're familiar with and you've used in pregnancy, and have that playing in the background. And then for smell, there's loads of different things you can do. You might bring in a little room spray, a diffuser, a little roller ball kind of essential oil thing that you can put on your pulse points. But something that gives a nice smell, like perhaps you like lavender, or something that aids relaxation. Again, these are things you can use in pregnancy, and the more that you've built that association with them, the more effective they'll be. So we've done sight, sound, smell, taste, give yourself some treats, pack them in your birth bag, things that are going to help with your energy levels. Drinks, maybe you want some coconut water, or you're packing some isotonic drinks, things that are going to help you to stay hydrated and fueled. I'll admit I did pack a can of full fat Coke in my in my birth bag.
It's okay.
Like little sugar hit. And then touch. So an easy way to make a hospital bed feel homely and familiar is to bring in kind of a throw from your sofa at home and put that over your hospital bed. And then when you've got your eyes closed, perhaps you're standing, you're resting over the hospital bed, it feels that familiar smell and touch from home. And also, obviously, as I mentioned, light touch massage is another thing that your birth partner can do to help you feel relaxed and good. So there are those little things that you can pack in your bag, and then very quickly your birth partner can get to work, and you can just change that space into one that's like low lighting, smells like a spa, you've got your happy music playing, you've got comforts from home, and actually it feels really nice, and you'll immediately feel more relaxed in that space rather than it feeling like unknown and clinical and brightly lit. And you just won't feel as relaxed, and the more relaxed you are, the better. And literally the quicker your labor will happen, easier, more comfortable, more straightforward.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning, isn't it, that if you're going into a hospital, you're planning to go to a hospital, then it's worth checking out any limits or policies they've got around, for example, plugging in electrical equipment. Hospitals often have concerns about unknown equipment being plugged into their sockets. Is there anything else that people can think about there that they should consider? I mean, finding out limits, I guess, is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you should have an appointment around 34, 36 weeks usually, where you go through your kind of birth plan with your midwife. And so that would be a good time where you can talk about those things, those kind of details. Yeah. If you're concerned about plugging things in, or your hospital has said that they're not keen on you doing that, then perhaps battery operated tea lights, or like the little candles, or battery operated fairy lights, something like that, where you can change the lighting without having to plug things in. But I do think certainly in the UK, there is this, recently a real kind of understanding of the difference that the environment will have. And especially in birth centres, which are kind of midwife-led areas of the labour ward, they will be doing things already themselves to make it more conducive for birth. I was just telling you my birth story just before we went on to this call, but I recently was hoping for a home birth, but there wasn't enough midwives available, so I had to go into the hospital. And when I arrived, they knew I was on my way in, and so they'd filled the pool, and they'd already put out these little tea lights, and it was like these kind of LED, like nice colours around the room, and they'd already kind of changed that lighting for me. And I noted that even in my kind of I was quite late on in my stages of labour. I was about to give birth. I noted that and I thought, oh, good work. They were already doing things like that. So I think on the whole, midwives are really, will be really supportive and embrace you making those changes.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Fantastic. That's fantastic. And tell us about learning a bit more about hypnobirthing and preparing for birth, and the question about how an online type course experience might be different than an in-person experience. How would you frame that?
Yeah, so when I started teaching hypnobirthing, which was about 7 years ago, or 8 years ago now, we're in 23, right? Quite a long time ago. I was teaching in-person classes, but I really, really wanted it to be as accessible as possible, because I really think everyone, if they want to, should have the opportunity to do a hypnobirthing course and learn this, what I consider to be essential knowledge. So I thought that an online course would be the best way of doing that, because with the in-person courses, you only can teach a set number of people. There's big overheads in hiring spaces. It means that the course has to be a certain price point, which doesn't make it accessible for everyone. Also, if you've got other children or work or other commitments, it's very difficult to sometimes coordinate diaries to make in-person courses. So there's certainly a lot of benefits to online. So when I launched the hypnobirthing pack, when I released that back in 2018, that was really like the first of its kind, to be this online package. And I think that was why it became so popular, was because it offered people the opportunity to attend a hypnobirthing course at a fraction of the price. They can watch from anywhere in the world at any time of day or night. So it's completely around your own schedule. You can watch on any device. You can watch some of the videos on your phone. You can then move to a laptop if you've got a smart TV, whatever you've got, really. You can watch on the go. It just means that you can work through the course at your own pace and however suits you. And some people kind of binge watch it. Some people watch just a little and often over a period of weeks. It also means you can go back and rewatch the videos as well. So if you attend a course and then you think, oh, I can't remember what they said about that, with an online course, you can just go back and watch it again. So there are certainly a lot of benefits of doing an online course. And especially then, obviously, the pandemic happened and online was the only option. So but I think even now that people can meet up in person, I think online courses for people with busy lives, it works really well. And you can work through that content at your own pace, essentially.
Absolutely. I have a question about the way that you look at the increasing desire to record parts or all of a birth, whether that's photographs or video. How do you integrate that into a hypnobirthing approach to birth?
Yeah, so I actually have done a few of those different things. So with my second birth, so I go through my birth history quickly. My first birth was 16 years ago, before I'd heard about hypnobirthing, and I had a very difficult labour experience and felt very frightened of birth after that. When I was pregnant with my second son, I did a hypnobirthing course. That's kind of what ignited this passion and changed my life. I went on to have a lovely home birth experience. It didn't even enter my mind to take photos or film it. And afterwards, I regretted that so much, because I had just had the most amazing experience of my life. And I just wanted to relive it. I wanted to look back at it, and I had nothing, like no photos, no videos. And it struck me then, I think pre that experience, if someone had said filming their birth, I'd be like, oh, why would you want to do that? I just wouldn't have thought you would want to. But after that experience, I thought, if you would invest in a photography for your wedding because you want to remember that special day, why would you not for your birth? Like, would you not want to remember that really special day? So when I was pregnant with my third child, I booked a birth photographer. It was like one of the first things. I was like, I am going to have, a record of this. And I met her when I was pregnant, so I knew who she was, and I talked about my kind of hopes for my birth. And then on the day when I was at the birth center, she came into the room. I kind of nodded, acknowledged her. And then she just stayed in the background the whole time. I wasn't even aware she was there. I had my eyes closed. I was in the birth pool. I was focusing on my breathing. And I really wasn't aware that she was there, kind of in the room. And then I got this incredible set of photos, which I will treasure for the rest of my life, like these amazing photos documenting my birth. And so, on a personal level, I know it's not for everyone, but I'm a huge advocate of recording your birth in some way, because it's the most amazing experience of my life. I've been giving birth to my children, and my only regret is that I don't have photos from all of them. So I personally absolutely love it. And then for my most recent birth, I was hoping to film it at home. I had this lovely setup. But because there's currently in the UK quite a shortage of midwives, and there wasn't enough people available essentially to attend my home birth, I had to go into the hospital, and I've got some footage from an iPhone, which wasn't quite what I was hoping for, but I do have that, and I have shared that on my Instagram, and I am still really glad that I've got that, and that moment of when my baby girl came out in the water and I picked her up and met her for the first time, and it's really special.
That's fantastic. It sounds like the key element with the birth photographer was their discretion, their being absolutely in the background, not inserting themselves in any way into the process.
Yeah, no, like you don't want some flash photography or anything. Absolutely. And like, either going with someone who's done it before or going through exactly how you want your birth experience to be. So talking to them about how you want the environment to be. And I think a little bit like a wedding photographer or videographer, they don't really insert themselves into the day. They are
No.
kind of peripheral. You don't really notice them. That's what people say. I've never got married, so I'm not speaking from experience, but people say that they didn't notice the photographer or videographer there on the day. They were just in that moment, and then the photographer and videographer were just in the background and captured it all. And that's kind of what you want for a birth photographer or videographer. Or you can just set up a camera yourself in the room, which I know people have done. So they haven't had anyone kind of manning that camera. They've just set it up in the space. That's something you can do. Or if you don't feel comfortable having another person, you could always ask your birth partner to make sure they're taking some photos if you feel more comfortable with that. But
absolutely.
I would absolutely recommend, I mean, if you hate the photos, you can always just bin them afterwards, can't you? But I think it's better to have that choice. You can't go back and get them. So I would always recommend doing it, because I think you will, like, you want that record of that time, even if it's just for yourself, even if you're not going to share it online, it's just for you to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic. Tell us a bit about what people can do next if they're interested in learning more about hypnobirthing and about the courses that you have on offer.
Yeah, sure. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more, we have a whole series of free videos on our YouTube channel, which is the Positive Birth Company on YouTube. They act as a really good kind of taster intro to hypnobirthing. We also have loads of other videos on there, workshops. We're releasing kind of free workshops all the time on our YouTube channel, so it's well worth subscribing. We also have online courses, which are £39, and they are kind of comprehensive courses we have for pregnancy, for birth, for the postnatal period. You can access them on any device from anywhere in the world. And like I mentioned before, work through them at your own kind of pace. And we also offer in-person classes in the UK as well at various locations if you are after in-person hypnobirthing classes. Or if you prefer learning by reading, then I do have my book, which is called Hypnobirthing: Practical Ways to Make Your Birth Better, which is sold on Amazon. And that's probably, I don't like recommending Amazon. You can also get it at different retailers, but right. Amazon's probably the cheapest.
in several languages, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's available in Italian, Russian, can't remember all the languages off the top of my head, Spanish. Yeah, and we also have the Freya app, which is like a virtual birth partner, which offers you that kind of breathing coaching and guided meditations that I've mentioned. And that's on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And again, that's available in 6 different languages as well.
Nice.
So quite a few different things at different prices.
Yes.
Something for everyone, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And just worth mentioning that £39 British pounds is about 50 US dollars, isn't it?
Yes,
so for people who think in other currencies, just connecting that. Fantastic. This has been really great. I appreciate you coming on, and especially with a recent birth.
Yeah, this is the first event or thing I've spoken at since I've had my baby, and this is really good timing, so I can hear her crying now. I'm not sure if you can.
Okay, well,
so perfect timing. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really, really an honour to be invited to be part of this.
It's been a pleasure, and I know that people will have gained a huge amount from listening to what you had to say. And just a reminder to everyone, the Positive Birth Company on YouTube, that's probably the best first step. But it's also a website, and there is a lot of different resources available. Thank you so much, Siobhan, and we'll let you get back to your family.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.